Greetings! What you have here is the spiciest baguette in existence. This Tier 10 French MBT has almost 10,000 DPM, around 9,763 to be exact. It carries a 140mm gun with a 5.93 second reload, and you factor in the defensibility and all retrofits. With Cortez you deal 963 damage, around 860 on average. You have what is essentially the Tier 9 version of this tank with an even bigger gun, and by God, this tank trades any kind of subtlety there exists in the world for a massive firepower boost. To start us off with this absolutely French monster, let's have a look at everything. So the first part, you get an armor crew cell, as similar to the Armata series do, which gives you a reduction to your crew damage. An enhanced maintenance kit, giving you better protection and increasing your repair speed of internal models by 30%, such as the Amarak, engine, breach, etc. And lastly, it also gives you an hazard package, which is attached to the front and side of the hull, which gives you some kind of protection, but not really that much. You get a bunch of smoke grenades and an enhanced turret drive. Now, personally, I'll go for the smoke grenades, but I may take the turret reverse speed at some point, as 40% does look to be quite memey. The tank also comes with a soft kill APS, and then lastly you have an automatic hard kill system, or what is essentially a trophy APS, or you get an improved loading mechanism which increases your reload speed by 20%. Obviously you want to go for the reload speed. Next up we have a upgraded ammo rack, which I believe gives you some better stuff. Not quite sure what it gives though, but oh well. And then we have an improved fire control system or a customized transmission. Obviously this tank is very much tops of firepower, so you're going to go for the aim time. Then a gunner sight, and then your choice between either a magazine autoloader, in which your ammunition is loaded instantly, giving you the ability to instantly hesh cornets and just about anything that you can pen with hesh shells, or a commander sight. The solution should be obvious. And then otherwise you get a improved turbine or an improved thermal sight. I personally go for the turbine, but the thermal sight should help with spotting people. Otherwise the rubber coated tracks, generally speaking, quite good. It gives you better camouflage. You are an MBT though, so really unsure about that. And then lastly you get an improved off-road suspension or a cooling system. Personally I go for the suspension as speed is good, and then also a nice 1500 horsepower diesel engine to round everything off. The shells on this tank are, on their own they're nothing special. 875 pen, 840 alpha damage. At base you have a reload time of 8.75 seconds, and it also gets hesh with a penetration of 490, but in all honesty the spool threshold of 182 does make things a little bit awkward sometimes. There is a choice of a couple of commanders you can take. Personally I go with Cortez to maximise that sweet alpha damage, but you do have the potential of going for some commanders at least. To start off you could always go with Victor to increase your 140 module damage, to be able to track people instantly, to deal critical damage to just about any crew member who thinks he's safe, and to basically do the things which Victor does. There's also the option of taking Vincent Girard, who gives you some hit points, reload speed increase when you bounce hits, not really that recommended that much in Leclarc, they don't have that much armor to begin with, and a 16% increase to your aim team, a reduction to your gunner injuries by 30% if he gets wounded / killed, but a max speed increase of 5.2%. And lastly some nice little hit point stuff lying around as well. Generally speaking, I don't really recommend going for Rachel, as her reload speed increase, well, you already have a quick reload speed to increase, so you might as well go for other stats. And the rest of commanders not really helping much, as this is a auto loader, so it doesn't have a loader. Apart from that, standard stuff applies. The driver, acceleration on off-road terrain increased by 20%, track and wheel speed increase, For the gunner, I've gone with cannon hit points and aim speed increase of 10%. Very nice loadout of 33 AP rounds and 13 Hesh. In games like Glops and Heat and PvE, you're very definitely going to be able to fire all of them at some point. And the crowning cake on the Leclerc's ridiculous abilities is the defense, which limits your max speed to 40 km an hour, but you gain a 200% acceleration, plus 30% hold reverse speed, plus 15% rate of fire, plus 25% module damage, minus 75% module camo factor, doesn't care for foliage, plus 30% camo factor while shooting, plus 50% repair speed, very useful, and a minus 60% to your ramming damage. Generally speaking, I go with a pretty basic MBT at this stuff, all for the gun at this point: max spread, rate of fire, repair speed, and optics, which are quite nice. Now, if we want to compare this to the other high DPM vehicles of the game, XM103 of course, without the 120, the XM103 with the 120 having around 7,000 damage. 2AX, and of course the Alte. As you can see here, the Leopard T4 has them all beat, and it has some pretty decent hit points as well compared to the rest of them, but generally speaking its armour is roughly comparable to the 2AX. So its turret armour, pretty decent. It's actually very difficult to take hold down, but its hull armour is basically garbage. Apart from that, it has some pretty nice camouflage, with the Alte for some reason having 20%, view range on the move with this retrofit being at 465, and the standard not that good French gun depression at -8. Its minimum spread is 0.10, which is the worst out of them, apart from the XM103 with the 140, and it has the longest aim time as well as some pretty slow turret reverse, and there are modules you can do to help that. Speed wise, 72 km an hour, which is very nifty. 0 to 32 of 3.71, which is beaten out by the Alte and the Object 640. And I believe the Type 99 as well, so it's a pretty nimble tank overall, and it is very powerful of course. Generally speaking, it's quite similar armour wise to the Tier 9 Leclerc, which will be the next review vehicle which will be released on Sunday. The lower hull being anywhere from 100 to 430mm thick, with the middle plate being around 700. Therefore, it is always imperative to aim as slow down as you can on a Leclerc, as trust me, you don't want to start randomly bouncing on that 700 plate. Apart from that, the turret itself can actually be relatively difficult to hit, quite similar to that of the Leopards. For some reason it's a little bit bigger on the left than on the right, but okay, whatever. And apart from that, when using Hesh rounds, it is generally speaking, you can pen them from the front. The Challenger 2 ADQ, I believe, with its higher penetration rounds, should have an easier time of doing so. Where did I put you? There you are. And as you can see here, the AGU has a far better time, which means Wilks and stuff will prey on the Leclercs pretty quickly. While stuff like Cornets and whatnot will basically murder a Leclerc, as they do with everything else except for the 490, as you will have seen in the previous overview. So, what we have is a tank with a ridiculous amount of DPM, an incredible amount of armour. Where are its modules? Well, generally speaking, French-wise, it is quite similar to a Leopard, with a blowout panel at the back, I believe. Well, also with an ammunition rack in the front, which means being shot at from the front, you can get ammo at quite a bit, except this time it's more in the middle part of the tank. The crew, however, are generally speaking quite well protected with that minus 50%. However, when using the bigger guns and Hesh rounds, you are still very likely to go through the Leclarc. And of course, generally speaking, it does seem to have some pretty decent armor on the side, but side scraping is still relatively a no-go, as due to the weak lower plate and that side armor over there, which gets very crappy. And as such, I don't really find you'll be able to side scrape that much with Leclercs, but at the very least, it's still a thing. So we have a PvP game and a Glops game to show you. So let's have a look. So for the start off, we have a PvP game with myself and my very wonderful friend Tank Sniper. Now, as you can see here, we have a reload of 6.60 seconds with the Leclarc. Without the defense ability, this is roughly equal to that of the T14 Armata and the Object 640 and of course the Merkava 4M, with only the X1A3 having a faster reload at this stage. However, when activating the defense ability, as you will see soon on, this will change very quickly. Now, the Leclarc does have a spotting feature that allows it to automatically spot enemies within a certain radius. However, I haven't really found it to be that much of a deal, as generally speaking it does seem to be more of a situational thing than anything else. As you can see here, I have a much more desert oriented theme than Tank Sniper over there with his black camo that I am very jealous of not being able to have. So, apart from that, at this point in time, I did actually press the wrong button, I believe. But it's okay. So there's an Object 490 over there, and as said in the previous Object 490 overview, the Leclarc Tier 4 is a very, very hard counter to it, along with the 2AX and other high DPM vehicles. But he can still hurt me. So for now, the first thing when you want to do with Leclarc T4 is to remember that while you have the hit points of a Tier 10, you don't have the armor of one, and therefore you need to pick your shots carefully. So generally speaking, while you do have an exceptionally high DPM, doing all of it in 1 minute, it is very much a no-go. But at the very least, under the knowledge of the fact you have such a high DPM, as you can see there, 5.93 seconds, you do have the ability to out DPM and completely out trade just about anybody in the entire game. As you can see, that leopard over there is gonna have a bad time, especially with commanders like Cortez. As you can see there, immediately reloaded again and fired. Remember, with Cortez, this is 963 damage every time, so things are not going to go well for Mr. Leopard over there, and in fact, that would have killed him. This tank with the defense ability does give it a incredible reach of being able to pop in and out of cover. As you can see, we're getting hit by the enemies over there on the ridge line. So, at least for the very fast, this isn't the fastest MBT in the same tier, but it does have the ability to quickly relocate. The same as the tier 9 does, so you are able to scoot and shoot pretty quickly. And just like the Object 490, you have the fun ability to immediately nope out of situations. So, hey, 490, how's it going? So, gonna wait for him to fire, then I'm gonna shoot at him. Well, I kind of wanted to shoot at him, Tank Sniper got in the way. As you can see there, 963 is almost very equivalent to what that 490 can do, and at this point, no pen, okay, back up again. That's more like it, one more hit. 490s are basically helpless when compared to a Leopard T40, and so are a lot of dirt guns, but that doesn't mean you're invulnerable to everything. Remember, things can still hurt you, and it is always best to pick your shots with the enemies, or to pick your fights at least. You don't want to get into a fight with 2 targets, unlike, say, a Challenger can, or a Leopard 2AX when it's hull down. And at the very least, this tank does excel at bullying people when they're not looking at you, as you only have a limited amount of hit points, and generally speaking, this thing doesn't take too well to being shot. So at this point in time, I've done 9,899 damage. Very spicy, if I may say so. But there's still a lot more enemies to take care of, and that Leclarc is going to feel the sting. 6,862. Very spicy. So, let's keep going. You can see a lovely bit of my decal over there. That does actually look like me in real life. Fortunately, the Armada had an APS pop there, so that happened, but people will die relatively quickly, so it's best to see if we can go out of cover, hit that other Leclarc over there. Trust me, seeing this thing dish out damage never gets old. Let's see if I can hit one of them. Hey Armada, how's it going? And at this point in time, you can imagine how this is going to go. So let's tell that. Okay, well, that's the PvP game gone, and as you'll see in the post-game stats afterwards, that game went pretty well. So let's have a look at a Glotz game. So this was my first game in the Leopard T4, and a couple of points I also wanted to mention is that so far this thing seems to be actually quite monstrous in PvE. For whatever reason, the bots seem to shoot the lower / middle part of the plate, which means most of the time they bounce. So for the most part, you're running around with a 9.7k DPM monster in PvE, and most of the bots can't even pin you. This may be fixed, and I do have reason to believe that this is a placeholder version. So whether or not this is the final Leclerc they intended, I'm unsure, but for now, it does seem to be rather enjoyable to do. Now, the reason why I chose this game is because of the variety of ammo I used and the fact that I was, generally speaking, quite incredulous at how effective the Hesh is on this thing. It's not quite as potent as the Hesh used on the Challenger, but it is still very effective versus targets regardless. And as you're going to see here, in a Glops game, this is where the Leclerc becomes outright monstrous. So at this point in time, I actually hadn't gotten the 20% rate of fire increase. I actually forgot it existed. So
we are capturing point 3.
we're running around with a 7.78 second reload time, and even then, this thing is, generally speaking, still quite very dangerous. But anyway, let's see what the rest of the enemy is going to be. So as you usually know in a Glops game, usually you want to push up. And at this moment in time, I am very pushing up. See where there's the enemy? Oh shit, there's a Wilk. Hey, how's it going? And thankfully, the sheer size of the gun means that module damage will be had even without using the Hesh rounds. And while the Hesh rounds are good, they are not as great as that on the Challenger. Noticeably the penetration, 400 penetration compared to the Challenger 6, which means that they will struggle to pen MBTs of the same tier, and occasionally K21s, and especially Poland balls, PLO1s, if you will, frontally and such. So the Hesh rounds on this is not a end of or doom beat or weapon. And it very much feels like a Hesh round. Which, as you can see there, getting hit by a Leclerc is definitely not a good thing. In fact, I believe this thing can outright 4-shot itself at some point. Oh, shit, T15. T15, back up. And for some reason, this guy just forgets I'm there. So, I believe a module swap, there we go, is occurring at some point. And there's Leclerc over there as well. Even get hit for some damage. Okay, fair enough. I never really liked the bombers in Glops, to be honest. So let's continue having a look at everything. So another T15 spawns. Okay. Relatively popular tank. Now, the key to taking out T15s and such is to simply pop in and pop out of fire. The ones with the double shot are extremely difficult to get rid of, but if they're using a single shot like that guy is, at the very least you're able to pop in and pop out as much as you can, and I believe I have the Hesh shells loaded at this point. No, I'm not sure if I did, but unfortunately that corner has run away this game. So, 99A2 spotted. Hey. Unfortunately a miss. So I do waste quite a bit of time going after this guy. It turns out that he made several mistakes when in fact he probably should have stayed there in his hole. He's just gonna run around aimlessly for a couple of minutes. Hey man, how's it going? Boop. And as you can see here, using this thing with Cortez is hilariously monstrous. Dealing max damage every time, especially with guns like previously on 2AX, which could actually train you for this. Means that you will bring the pain on people, and at this moment in time the Leclerc's gun is basically monstrously overpowered at this point, and generally speaking a nerf to around 8 seconds, a little bit faster than the XM103 because XM103 does have more hit points and better armor, would be fine. Although I would like to see the XM103 and the Challengers 140s get a pen buff to 825, the same as this does. So, at this point in time, the defensibility is off. You can tell. Oh, hey, Wilk. That was a Hesh shell. The Hesh is very fun. And at this point in time, I'm actually simply just going to suicide into the enemy. Hey, cornet. Unfortunately, I get corneted. But, as you can see there, the module damage with the Hesh shells and the rate of fire especially could make this an incredibly difficult target for Cornets and Wilks. Now, generally speaking, I am kind of... It does hurt to say that the Leclarc needs a nerf because of how dangerous it is. Well, it is dangerous to Wilks and Cornets, and as someone who has to go up against those things regularly, it is generally refreshing to see an MBT that they are genuinely terrified of. But regardless, enough is enough, and for this thing it's going to come, and I hope the PvP game and perhaps how damage will done in this game will probably show you how it's really damn powerful. So 9982 continues to move up. Cornet is running around for some reason. Now, Glops can always be a difficult game mode to say yes I did well, simply because how Glops is played. It rewards suicide rushing and not really caring about your hit points, unlike PvP. However, PvP at the moment, as we all know, is very much dominated by Rush B, don't care about whatever's happening. Hello, Cornet. How you doing? Fortunately with Cortez you can happily two-shot Cornets and in more than enough time to be able to really hurt them, so I'm generally speaking quite okay with that. Boop. A nice bit of ramming done to this, and fortunately speaking, light tanks such as Poland Balls and K21s can do damage to a Leclarc, but it has to be from relatively long range, as the sheer reload speed of the T4 is enough to make their insanely fast reload speed kind of obsolete for the most part. So regardless, hi Poland. So at this point in time I am in fact using Hesh on this guy. I should be using normal AP rounds. See, better gun there. However, I do take 2 hits from those guys. There's especially a Wilk running around, and at this point I'm trying to hide my hull as much as I can. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen, and it's very likely this Wilk could kill me very quickly. Fortunately, the Wilk does screw up, but the Poland Ball does not. But anyway, that's 2 lives so far, twice the amount of damage, which is, generally speaking, almost a 2-to-1 ratio in favour of Glops, and as we all know, doing positive in Glops can sometimes be an incredibly difficult game. But anyway, regardless, this is a generally speaking very fun tank to play, as you would have guessed, and when it came to doing Spec Ops Hard, I found this to be very refreshing, especially in Chapter 3, where the combination of a tank the AI couldn't penetrate for some reason and an incredible amount of alpha damage and DPM made for a very fun vehicle to play. Against AI at least, which I'm sure we all very much enjoy seal clubbing at this point in life. So, hi Cornet, how's it going? Oh, you know what's going to happen with this. And unfortunately, I do get distracted with this K21. Hey. Unfortunately, no ramming damage was done. However, there is a walk over there. And he brought friends. So, knowing that the game is pretty much over at this point, you can start suicide rushing Cornets and Wilks and the like. K21s, however, it is always better to aim for the turret than the hull. You will find out a little bit later, as their hull can be a little bit suspicious when it comes to space to shape charge rounds, as their spaced armor can be a pain in the ass. Wilks, however, can eat a dick, and I will not deny that I have a great deal of pleasure watching Wilks get absolutely obliterated by this thing. Unfortunately, the K21 over there has disappeared. Oh, I will. Beep! So at the very least, if you want to punish those Wilk drivers in Glops, there is no better vehicle to play than his. Aside from the Object 490, which they can't penetrate. But the Object 490 can't do that. This can. So anyway, we've got a couple of enemies to take care of at this point. I do forget to load the retrofit. No penetration again. And just remember, if I was in a Challenger, this would have gone very much differently. Another aim in there, some pretty shoddy aiming by me. This is actually pretty much showing all of the spaced armor shots the K21 has. Ah, finally, a pen. However, at this point in time, I have no idea what that rook was doing. So, can I shoot the rook, please? There we go. So that's the Glops game gone. So, let's have a look at those post-game stats. So for the first game, a grand total of 9,751 damage was dealt, with a 900% booster on Balcons for whatever reason. Now this is actually, funnily enough, 6 more than the total DPM of the tank, so I did the damage per minute for one game. Lots of damage done preferably to 3 tanks where the majority was, and to another 2, 1 to the Armada, 2 to the Object, about 2 to 3 to the Leopard, and those guys as well. Highest damage done in the game overall, which is pretty nice, and an overall third of the damage done by the entire team. Very spicy indeed. Total potential damage done would have been 11,000 with a couple of bounce rounds, but that's okay. With a total amount of mitigated damage around 2,100, so good damage, not so much on bouncing hits. Of course, we also have the first game done with the Leclarc, if I can find it, where did I put it? There you go. All the way. The grand total of 24,000 damage done, 540 battle coins, very nice. And the second highest damage done in the game, with only a Wilt doing more, and it can be, generally speaking, quite difficult to get as much damage as a Wilt can, thanks to the petty balance, the 4-second reload, and the fact that its module damage can cause fires and MRX. I fucking hate those things. So, an achievement in itself, really. 36 shots fired, 31 landed, 5 missed, bunch of enemies killed, some enemies damaged, quite a 4 fires started, 15 components destroyed and 1 crew member wounded. Not quite petty levels, but better than most MBTs do. With a total potential damage of 30 and damage bounced of 14,000. So, is this the most powerful tier 10 in the game at the moment? MBT wise, yes. Has extremely high DPM, a very punchy cannon, 825 penetration, 840 penetration, which is enough to go through just about every single tank armor in the game, bar some which only the Leopard 2AX can go through, and at the very least it is a very fast, relatively chunky amount of hit points, very mobile tank. Should you get one? Yes. Is it fun to play? Yes. How long until it gets nerfed? I have no idea. Go on, grab one, go into Glops, and kill some Cornets and Rooks for me. That's it for now, guys. Mic drop. I'll see you on Sunday for the Tier 9 Leclerc review.